who can't leave. Of course, there are many tragic stories. But he said he was determined that Israel is still going to be hitting the infrastructure it can. Of course, as we have to emphasize to viewers, Israel's actions on the ground, and Jerome knows this full well, are vetted by lawyers who are applying the standards of international humanitarian law to everything that happens.
Right, and we have to note that that area in Gaza is both where the hostages are believed to be held. In fact, we had proof of that because the rescue of this young soldier the other day was in that area in northern Gaza.
I think that courage, determination, and the full intensity of the fires, of course, is essential, but we have to also employ wisdom in the way we move and follow those targets. We have to be very smart. We really don't want the window of operation to be open enough, and we are very careful. I think we'll be very careful in the way we move in and achieve our goals. And I think this is the way the IDF now works.
Because civilian casualties are bad for Israel. And for exactly the reason that George just said.
Oh, and another interesting point, you mentioned the cooperation with the United States, with the Sixth Fleet, and in other ways, but he also stressed Israel is acting alone. That could be part of reaction. There was a report in the New York Times this evening, American commandos are in Israel helping to locate hostages. There were early reports of support personnel, mainly on the side of intelligence, that perhaps assisting Israel in terms of locating hostages. And guys, remember, there are many American citizens there, Israelis who hold American citizenship. This report suggests there are U.S. commandos, which would be something new. Plus, we should know, we should know the U.S. itself, though, did confirm it sent 300 more troops to the Middle East. That was earlier confirmation. But they stressed not within Israel. Those are in other areas, and of course, U.S. forces in the region are coming under attack in other locations, particularly on the ground in Iraq and in Syria.
We know very well the American Special Forces. I myself know them from my youth. But of course, in terms of our special forces and the way we conduct the war in our territories, it will be conducted by us, by the IDF, and we don't need this extra help. And I don't think the Americans think in this term. But in terms of the overall regional context, this is where America plays a role, an important role. We saw it with the interception of the Houthi missiles. We see it with respect to the northern border in Syria and the whole context of Iran. So this is the context in which we work hand in hand with the U.S., but not on the ground in our territories, in our fronts.
It was an essential statement because Israel's national security doctrine, going back to the birth of Zionism, and again, as I always say, it's such a cliche that we just check it off our bingo card in our heads whenever we're listening to a speech from Benjamin Netanyahu, is that Israel defends itself by itself. Right? And the whole concept of the Jewish state, the whole concept of Zionism is we alone are responsible for our self-defense because at the end of the day, we are alone and we don't trust anybody else. So he is sending a message in Hebrew to the Israeli public, but of course also by extension, but I think really colored more to us than the rest of the world, that don't worry, we still can defend ourselves by ourselves. It's important to have a relationship with the United States, to work with the United States. We thank the United States for its support. And yes, there are 2 U.S. aircraft carrier strike groups parked in the Mediterranean, but at the end of the day, we are capable of defending our own country.
All right, I want to go back to our Pia Steckelbach down in Sderot here, update on any updates on the situation there. Also, we heard Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari saying there's been heavy fighting in the northern Gaza Strip. He stressed Israel trying to avoid civilian casualties, but saying right now it's a war zone. There's a combat situation there. And while the IDF is doing anything it can, just as it's absorbing casualties, it's expected they'll be on the civilian side as well.
Right, Khaled. Well, the fighting has been intensifying here throughout the last hours. We know that heavy fighting is taking place on the ground and from the air here. We've been hearing the airstrikes. We've been seeing the sky lighting up whenever an airstrike is happening here. We are also hearing the Israeli artillery striking Gaza from here, specifically the northern part of the Gaza Strip. You're here looking into, during daylight at least, to the northern part of the Gaza Strip. We do know that specifically within the last hours, the Israeli troops have been targeting the Jabalia area in the north of Gaza. This is where that important Hamas commander was killed, but also where dozens of civilians are believed to have been killed. This is the area that the Israeli forces civilians have been calling upon those people to evacuate towards the south, but we do know that an unknown number of people have not done that for several reasons. People who cannot evacuate for many reasons, health reasons, children, elderly people. But we also do know that people who evacuated south and found that humanitarian conditions. Some of them even made their way back to the north because they have their houses there, and they're now in the crossfire of those Israeli airstrikes and also those fierce fighting taking place on the ground between Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Hamas, and the Israeli army. The Israeli army also saying in a statement this evening that 2 soldiers were killed in that ground offensive, and also 2 more are seriously injured there. But we do see here that the Israeli airstrikes are intensifying, as we hear from the ground, that also the fighting that troops are engaged on the ground is becoming more fierce there, Khaled.
Pierre Steckelbach there in the south near the Gaza border. Thank you for that. Now, since October 7th, the world has seen a surge of anti-Semitism and the demonization of Israel, from the web to the streets, from verbal to physical assaults. Israeli President Isaac Herzog addressed this issue today with this statement.
This is a message that must be heard loud and clear. When they say from the river to the sea, they say without any Jews. When they demonstrate on campuses against Israel, that means without Jews. When they criticize Israel fighting for its, defending its people and fighting against the most brutal attack that humanity has seen in last generation, they mean no Jews. This is a fight not only against Israel, it's a fight against anti-Semites all over the world, and we are here to strengthen our brothers and sisters of Jewish communities all over the world, to show solidarity with them, because we are all in this together. We support the Jewish communities. We call upon world leaders and upon each state's leadership to make sure that Jews are protected and defended, and that the fight against anti-Semitism is covered in all layers of the legal and law enforcement systems, so that Jews will not be hurt. Hamas, Al-Qaeda, and ISIS are all there together, wishing to ban us all from the face of the earth. And if it starts with Israel and it starts with the Jews, it will never end there. Europe will be next, and that is why we are fighting a battle on behalf of the entire world.
Now, anti-Israel and pro-Palestinian protests have been seen all over Europe, despite the fact that many European citizens have been killed by Hamas or are being held hostage in Gaza since October 7th. This includes Germany, which 2 days ago learned, like the rest of the world, about the murder of German-Israeli citizen Shani Lok, whose half-naked body was dragged into Gaza following the attack on the Supernova Music Festival. Now, there's a delegation of European parliamentarians visiting Israel today, and joining us in studio is one of them, Lisa Hildegard Badum, member of the Bundestag for the Alliance 90, or the Green Party, perhaps better known. Lisa, thank you for joining us.
Good evening.
First of all, let me ask you about your trip here, and also about Germany how is it dealing with the fact, as I said before, that Germans are involved, being both as victims, as we saw, by that unfortunate woman, and the fact there are German citizens being held in Gaza.
I think a lot of people in Germany are horrified by the massacres that we have been seeing, and that's why I wanted to come here. I wanted to see with my own eyes what happened and how Israel is coping with the situation. And so we have been to Kfar Aza, one kibbutz which suffered an attack, and we met with people who formerly lived in Kfar Aza and who have relatives who are held as hostages at the moment. And so this, it was really, for me, it was a visit which brought a lot of impressions to me.
I can imagine. Now, the German government has been relatively supportive of Israel in its military campaign. The Greens are part of the alliance, the current governing alliance. But give us a sense about that support. Israel wants to carry out a military operation. It knows and acknowledges that there will be civilians be killed as it tries to rescue its hostages and protect its civilians. Give us a sense of how you think the German government policy is to this, Israel's undertaking so far.
So German government is very clear that, of course, Israel has the right to defend itself, and I think it's clear that it's also a battle of surviving, battle that Israel can still exist in this region. I think it's very clear to German government and also to our responsibility, which we have for our history, and we are very sure that Israel is of course, handling the situation within the humanitarian law. And I think it's a problem that repeatedly there are accusations from the United Nations and other institutions that humanitarian law might not be, so IDF might not be conform to humanitarian law. And everything I saw, and we spoke with a lot of people from the IDF, is that the Israeli army is trying everything to protect civilians in Gaza and to attack the terror centers we have there and to attack Hamas and not civilians.
Can I just ask you, because the Greens Party has been critical, we have to say, of Israeli policies in the past, especially regarding the Palestinians. Has it viewed this situation somewhat differently? I mean, following the October 7th attack, or you speaking more personally, or what's your sense of that?
So, of course, I'm a friend of Israel for many, many years, but also the Green Party isn't, the Green Party maybe used to be before 20, 30 years or something. We have a majority of our party members. We are in solidarity with Israel. It's very clear for us that it's our duty as citizens and as part of the government to support Israel.
Okay. And let me ask you, we heard President Herzog speak.
And maybe I can add this. And we heard our foreign minister. She spoke out very loud and clearly that the terror attack of Hamas is a massacre and that Israel has to do everything to defend itself.
Okay, let me just ask you also about, we heard President Herzog speak about concern over, certainly there's freedom of expression, and if those who want to support Palestinians be critical Israel, that's there, but disturbing tones in some of these rallies, support for Hamas, incitement that crosses the line into anti-Semitism and demonization of Israel. And unfortunately, more serious incidents such as the burning or torching of a synagogue in Berlin. How concerned are you as the government about these manifestations of anti-Semitism?
We're seriously concerned. We all think it's a shame. It's a shame in Germany that Jews cannot live here or can live in Germany in peace and security, and that they have to fear attacks. And a lot of demonstrations were forbidden where those perils occurred, you mentioned, and we have to think about further measures against terror organizations in Germany, and a lot of them have too much space to move around, and yeah, this will be part of our discussions in the next month, what we can do against radical Islam.
All right. Well, I just want to ask you, this is Owen Alterman, our senior diplomatic correspondent. Interesting to hear, because Europe has been a difficult position for Israel diplomatically in the past as it's conducted its military operations, including in the Gaza Strip. Do you sense a change in tone coming here?
Well, two levels. I think, Kalev, that the response from Europe's leaders, the political center of Europe, if you will, has just been extraordinary, including but especially the European Union in Brussels. Remember the Commission building being lit up with the Israeli flag, the strong statements from Ursula von der Leyen. There obviously has been pushback, especially over the course of time within the EU and its institutions, but still, I think even at this hour, even at this date, the support from the political center in Europe has just been extraordinary, and I think that has to be Israel's strategy politically going forward in Western democracies, to occupy the political center, right? Not be connected with the far right or the far left, but to be the home for people who are in the political center. And this is a trend that I hope our officials pick up the ball and run with. But of course, Germany is not Europe. Germany is Germany. Just to make clear what the member of parliament said, Annalena Baerbock, the foreign minister, is from the Green Party. So it's coming from the Green Party, and what she says represents the Green Party. But Germany's post-Holocaust culture, I was listening to you, I was almost brought to tears. The post-Holocaust culture that Germany has built, the German people have built, not just we, but the German people have built over the course of 3 generations, is just so extraordinary. And maybe the greatest example and the most courageous example of reconciliation in human history. And I think all of us in Israel just are in awe of it, and owe the German people, not just the leaders, but the people at the popular level, an incredible amount of gratitude. that they have held so strong with this culture for so long, over so many decades. And I think I join really millions of Israelis in just expressing an enormous amount of gratitude for that, for your support at this hour, but much more so for all that's been accomplished in the relations between our peoples over not just decades, but generations.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was as an MK, I was heading our delegation to the European Council, and I think it was a philosophy of my party, and I think in general this is where we stand right now. Israel alliance is Europe, US, European Union, and even NATO, and I think we have to, the regional conflict that we are within only strengthen the issue. This is the alliance that we have to keep and maintain strategically as we look forward, and I think it's also a reminder to Israelis that sometimes they have to admit we're snobbing Western European countries for a while. We are part of this alliance, and this is how we go forward from this regional conflict forward.
Amen.
Well, I think this conflict has somewhat sharpened those views, especially as we see the direction that, for example, Russia and some other countries have taken as well. Lisa Hildegard, Badum, thank you for joining us on I-20.
Thank you for having me.
So thank you for coming to Israel. Now, let's move back down south. For 2 weeks, Israeli news Channel 12 has followed families of the missing and kidnapped as they work tirelessly to find any information they can about. I'm sorry, I'm going to backtrack there. Okay. No, okay. I'm going to bring it back to studio. Daron, let me just ask you. Now we've heard about it. You spoke about the Americans.
The alliance for sure. And I'm saying it because I think there was a moment of clashing between us and European countries that used it according to our conflict. But now that the conflict goes regional and Europe is part of the conflict in some sense, we really have to think about it globally. And I say and emphasize our ties with the European Union, the European Council, also with NATO, are crucial for the existence of Israel, and I think we can contribute to Europe, Europe can contribute to us, and together with the US umbrella, we can try to get out of this regional conflict.
Okay, Lisa Hildegard Badum again, thank you for joining us. And now we're going to move back down south. The local security chief of Kibbutz Givim near the Gaza Strip gave I-24 News a rare look at life in the community after the October 7th attack, and his determinedly optimistic vision for the future of the area despite the tragedy it has gone through. Ori Shapira has that story.
Kibbutz Givim, near the Gaza Strip, adjacent to the southern city of Sderot, was not severely hit by the brutal terror attack by Hamas on October 7th. But things could have been very different. As Gil Schwartzman, a member of the kibbutz, tells I-24 News about the dramatic moments.
At around 7 a.m., I heard gunshots around the gate. I got a call from the local security coordinator. He said, "I've been shot. I'm injured." I called the standby squad, and we came to help him. Another car was shot at, and the guy there was shot in his head, but he survived. Another car was also hit by gunshots and grenades. We counted 45 bullet holes in the car. The local security chief got hit in his leg, and I had to take his place. We also had a lot of luck, perhaps even divine providence. I want to show you something special. This gate took a lot of bullets. When we opened the gate, look at the shape of the bullet exit hole.
Kibbutz Givim was established in 1947, few months before Israel declared its independence. Over the years, it's known many challenges due to its sensitive location.
In the beginning, people lived here in tents. In July 1947, this structure was built to protect the residents from attacks by Egyptians. Members of the kibbutz lived in tents and small cabins.
Schwartzman is one of 16 people of the standby squad, the only ones who remain in the kibbutz out of its 617 members. When we walk around, we see empty houses, but thanks to Schwartzman and the few people who were left here, the kibbutz is not neglected, and even the local dairy is functioning.
I was in Germany on family vacation when the situation started. After a few days I came back. It's a bit strange to be here. I'm alone here, except for a few people and soldiers, but what can I do?
Outside the kibbutz, we visit Startup, which Schwartzman directs. This startup hub is home to dozens of high-tech companies which develop revolutionary inventions from 3D printers to FSMP platforms.
We've been active for 6 years now. All the companies have told me that they are not leaving this hub. Other companies have been interested in participating in this project. It's the first high-tech hub in the Negev, and one of the biggest and most successful ones. High-tech always has a future. I have no doubt that in 2 years, when you come back to visit, we'll have expanded to 50 companies.
Despite the horrific tragedy, Schwartzman is still optimistic and says he believes that most of the residents will return to their home eventually, and that Kevim and the high-tech scene will flourish. Perhaps a ray of hope in this dark time in the south.
Owen, there's news coming out from Reuters releasing a story saying, relating to something you spoke about earlier, according to Palestinian and Egyptian sources, the Rafah crossing will be opened today, for Wednesday, tomorrow, for a number of Gazans to complete their treatment in an Egyptian hospital.
Wow, how about that?
So it seems that when Safi Negbi was speaking, he actually
He knew of what he spoke.
He was giving foreshadowing, and that is an important development.
Listen, I just want to get here for a second. He hinted at that in what he was saying, and he hinted at the ships. So let's see exactly where they're going to be treated. But a very interesting development.
It emphasized the regional aspect of the conflict. Egypt and Jordan are, we have to admit, our allies in this context. Also, I think the Palestinian Authority, and as we go forward, we have to maintain this alliance in order to really contain this conflict anyway.
I also suspect, we'll have to learn more as this unfolds, that there was a certain person with the initials JB who might have been involved in this development.
I would think, well, I would have to say Secretary of Blinken. We'll talk about this a little later in the program. We go to Washington. By the way, those are live pictures you're seeing in the back there, flares and smokes. That is Gaza Strip, the northern Gaza Strip, and clearly intense fighting continuing there. To the evening, the Secretary of State Blinken gave testimony today in the Senate regarding a foreign aid package that the Biden administration is trying to push through, including $14 billion for Israel, and he was stressed the need for regional cooperation, including Egypt, to come into Gaza when the operation is over, to help administer that.
I think it's part in the end of the initial Saudi initiative, and I think once this conflict ends, we'll be back on track, I hope, to this idea of strengthening this regional alliance, and this is the only way out from the conflict. But we're still in the early stages of this campaign, and there's a lot of fighting going forward and a lot of obstacles going forward.
All right, Doron Avital, Owen Alterman, thank you for joining us. Stay with us. Those are live pictures you were just seeing there in the Gaza Strip. Obviously, fierce fighting still going on. Of course, confirmation to Israeli soldiers who have been killed there during that battle. Stay with us. We'll be back at the top of the hour with more on I-24 News, our coverage of the Israel-Hamas war.
Susceptible to damage than previously believed.
Stress is power conferred upon something, and when that power exceeds a certain level, something will break down.
At her lab in Hebrew University's Edmund and Louis Safra Center for Brain Sciences, Professor Hermona Sorek is proving just how permanent that damage is.
There's a major difference between our brain and other tissues in our body. So muscle cells can be replaced. Blood cells are replaced on a daily basis. But the nerve cells we have in our brain, that's what we got born with, and that's it for the rest of our lives. We examined recently what happens to a young mouse, 7 days old, when it's stressed. And a mouse that has been subjected to that type of stress will be an underdog forever.
What Professor Sorek has discovered is that it alters the physical brain, sometimes permanently.
We analyzed those genes and we found genes that are modified.
These physical stress reactions can actually cause degenerative brain disease.
When they fail to vanish, you get diseases. When they accumulate over time without being removed from the cells, this is when you get damage, permanent damage.
So not only do the effects of stress accumulate forever, they can then pass to future generations.
dangerous to them.
Over 1,300 people murdered and more than 3,000 injured, and the war with Hamas continues. We bring you first-hand testimonies from the front lines, from those who survived, and all the records of the atrocities by Hamas. Follow us as Israel fights terror from the south and north. Get the inside scoop on what's going on. Only on I-24 News. As we speak, our soldiers are fighting on the battlefield, fighting with courage and heroism, engaging in fierce close-quarter battles in which they are eliminating terrorists. This type of combat endangers our forces and carries a heavy price, and it is complex, but it is critical to achieve the objectives of the war.
Welcome back to the special broadcast on I-24 News. I'm Caregiver. It is day 25 of Israel's war against Hamas. A quick update. Air raid siren alert has just been issued for the Ashkelon region. We'll give you any further information we have as we go along. We're joined in studio now by Dr. Emmanuel Navon, an international relations expert, the CEO of ELNIT, and Reserves IDF Major General Eitan Dangot, a former military secretary to 3 defense ministers, former coordinator of government activities in the territories. I have to tell you now, we are getting sirens in Tel Aviv. I'm going to try to keep broadcasting as we go. Sirens in Tel Aviv. We're going to stay in the studio. Actually, you can see some of the other employees running in the background there to the air raid shelter. We're going to try to stay on air if we can to bring you a live feed if we have from the Tel Aviv skyline at this hour. There have been, this is not the first time, there have been Tel Aviv sirens in Tel Aviv during the day, several interceptions by the Iron Dome defense system. There was also rockets fired this afternoon at the city of Ashdod. There were 4 people injured in that incident. We're just now waiting usually for the Iron Dome interception system to operate. Eitan, it seems as a lot of rocket firing today. It seems as Gaza, the Hamas is being under pressure in northern Gaza. They're responding with some heavy rocket fire.
Yes, it started from yesterday that you can see that there is more intensive rocket attacks from Gaza towards the medium and the long range. What does it mean? It means that first of all, Hamas has capacities and their capabilities and they have enough rockets and they're making.
Oh, well, I just want to say we just heard a boom and the studio did shake a little bit. That was presumably the Iron Dome interception, or it landed at sea, perhaps.
Can be. So what I said that Hamas is making a calculating land launchering system by keeping more rockets for medium and long range. What I think is this is a way of respond to try to press the Israeli public opinion and to create any kind of uncertainty by the population by launching towards the center.
Okay, I just want to say just a minute ago, those are interceptions, those lights that you see going up. That's our feed from Israel's Channel 12 News. You saw a couple of interceptors go up. That's the sky. Usually we see some flashes there. So it looks like there were interceptions in the skies right above the studio here in Tel Aviv.
So just to finalize this, it will continue, but this is the fact. One of the failure of Israel during the escalations with Hamas, that we didn't succeed to find any kind of a system to destroy these launchers. We missed the fact that if we would use an attack at the beginning, at the producing system, at the storages, and this kind of thing, the damage would be much more than now try to catch the launcher or those who are launching from the field. So this is something that as more as we are going and creating success in our offensive operation, we will see this kind of launchering towards population.
I was seeing more interceptions in the sky. This was just, I don't think that's live. That was
that was we saw before as well.
Yes.
And we have to explain to the people who are watching us that the orders in Israel is to wait 10 minutes from the siren till there is allowed them to move from their shelter, because there are sometimes some pieces of the launchers or the missile that...
Right, the intercepted missiles, the fragments from the missiles coming down, and there have been injuries from that, and it looks like this was a series of missiles. Sirens ran across the whole Tel Aviv, greater Tel Aviv metropolitan area. Cities like Ramat Gan, Bnei Brak, Petach Tikva, Ramat HaSharon, Bat Yam, and Holon. So a fairly widespread attack. Pretty much, this is the second time this day we've seen this kind of incident, this kind of rocket fire in the Tel Aviv area. And as we explained, some of that is obviously a reaction to the intense fighting of the Israeli ground forces now in the northern Gaza Strip, as Hamas finds itself under more and more pressure, and its rocket launchers under more and more pressure. They have to utilize their arsenal, obviously, before the IDF.
For another few weeks or months to serve their purpose during the war. So it still will be a problem that we will have to face with it and to try to make the damage as little as we can.
Right, and Emmanuel, a test of the Israeli public. It's important to remind the viewers, the entire Israeli public, in a sense, is on the front line of these attacks. This is disrupting daily life, disrupting the economic life, social, education in every way. These attacks are a test of the Israeli public.
Yeah, and I think what's impressive about this war is how Israeli society has reacted to the war. If before the war we had a very divided public arguing and fighting about judicial reform, today we have an Israeli society that is united against the enemy, that is fighting regardless of political opinions, and is fighting regardless of people's opinion of the government, and they're also helping each other. We witness a lot of initiatives supporting civilians affected by the terrorist attacks of Hamas, supporting our soldiers, and that's, I think, where our enemies have been mistaken, misunderstanding and misreading Israeli society. The fact that we were arguing about politics a few months ago does not mean that we won't do everything to protect our country. Unlike our neighbors, fighting here does not mean destroying our own country and killing each other. It's a major misunderstanding and misreading of Hamas and other enemies in the region.
Right, and let's talk a little about the ground operation now going on in the Gaza Strip. We reported earlier on the IDF confirming at least 2 soldiers falling in that battle, but dozens of Hamas terrorists, including some major figures, the Jabalia battalion commander who directed much of the October 7th attack, being killed. But really now Israel is getting the IDF is getting into the, if you want to call it the nitty gritty, the really difficult stage of really fighting and starting to move in those dense urban areas of Gaza City.
Absolutely. I think that first of all, this offensive operation now around Gaza is going more and more towards a higher stage. And what we see now, much more divisions or brigades are entered to Gaza. The program or the plan is running. It's running.
10. 10. I so 45.
With careful activities, with the direct fire, we have a very important goal to kill and to destroy more and more people from Hamas and infrastructure and arms, etc. There is intelligence that is coming also to the process during their activities. So we don't have to hurry.
Kaya nga nalipatan sa
With a very patient steps around us. But on the other hand, let's say it's very clear.
Manikad ko?
This is one
50?
of the most
Wait, may sakit pala ako ng
to make a panic war in the world, in my opinion, during the last thousands years that you watch it. And because of it, they organized themselves for the last years very deeply.
Sige ate.
The underground,
Kasi siya kapabisya.
the lunch tunnels,
Uy, sabi ang gagawin ko tarong mountain, may lagay tarong
a lot of charges and making it flexible way when they identify the movement of the idea. So it's very, very professional way of work. It's very, very
Mag-upload dati bali kita
it will continue in such a
Bating
way.
ko palatang. Ay, alam, di bayad na na.
Look and to surround the main street of the Gaza city in order to move
Salamat. Bye-bye.
open area for the civilian within left till now, the area of the north part of Gaza. It is in the southeast of the area that we entered.
All right, I want to move away a little away from Israel now to the United States. The Israel-Hamas conflict continues to be a source of fierce debate at the United Nations. Last night, Israeli ambassador to the UN, Gilad Erdan, made the bold gesture in the Security Council of donning a yellow star like those that Jews were forced to wear under the Nazis. Here's Erdan.
Some member states have learned nothing in the past 80 years. Some of you have forgotten why this body was established. So I will remind you, from this day on, each time you look at me, you will remember what staying silent in the face of evil means. Just like my grandparents and the grandparents of millions of Jews, from now on, my team and I will wear yellow stars. We will wear this star until you condemn the atrocities of Hamas and demand the immediate release of our hostages.
Now, well, let's go to our senior U.S. correspondent, Mike Wagenheim in New York. And Mike, a dramatic gesture there by the ambassador. Not everybody in Israel feels this is the way to go, but clearly he wants to make a point there in what is clearly you could say, an unfriendly environment at the UN, to say the least.
Yeah, I think there's good faith arguments to be made on both sides of this, Khaled. You know, Erdogan is on the ground there at the UN day after day, deals with the absolute nonsense that goes on there, the anti-Israel bias, which is as prominent as ever, and he's quite frustrated with what he's seen as the UN's unwillingness to unconditionally, especially with the Secretary General, condemn Hamas and their massacre. It shouldn't be that hard. And so what he's basically saying is, hey, you guys want to be silent about this? Well, it harkens back to a day when the world was silent as well, and we saw the repercussions of that. So he's putting on his yellow star, and he says he's going to keep it on until the UN can find the moral courage and clarity to condemn Hamas. Meanwhile, we've got folks like Danny Dayan, the head of the Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial Museum, who's criticized Erdogan's gesture, saying that it's actually a sign of weakness, that Israel is a state where it can protect all the Jews. If Erdogan wants to show pride in being a Jew, he should slap on an Israeli lapel pin. Some unnamed foreign ministry officials are also saying that Erdogan is not coordinating his messaging with the foreign ministry. And Erdogan getting undermined somewhat over the last few days. He had come out after Antonio Guterres' controversial comments a couple of weeks ago, possibly equivocating Hamas and Israel's reaction to them. And Erdogan said there would be no UN employees that would be granted visas, starting with the humanitarian coordinator, until something changed. Well, that humanitarian coordinator, Martin Griffiths, was given a visa by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who said they would take it on a case-by-case basis. Listen, there's some undertones to this, I think, that are fair to bring up, Colin. Number one, Erdogan is very popular in the Likud and is a potential challenger down the road for the premiership. He's seen somewhat as a threat, popularity-wise, to Benjamin Netanyahu, and we see what happens to those who are seen as a possible challenger, even slightly, down the road to the prime minister, just like Danny Dino before him, who was shuffled off to the UN. Gilad Erdogan as well. So there might be some good faith in saying Erdogan is wrong here. There is also something to be said that maybe he's being undermined for other reasons altogether.
All right, Mike, stay with us, because the Israel-Gaza conflict also the subject of discussion and some discord in Washington today. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken was testifying in the Senate on the Biden administration's request for supplemental funding that would include $14 billion in aid, when an anti-Israeli protesters in the hall interrupted the proceedings with chants and shouts. They were then removed by security. Now, of course, today the Senate voting on the appointment of Jack Lew as the next U.S. ambassador to Israel. That's in the face of Republican opposition over Lew's prior support for the Iran nuclear deal. Mike, some very interesting things going on there in the Senate over Jack Lew's nomination. Some Republicans, at least one, sort of breaking ranks with his party on this nomination.
That's right. The vote is actually ongoing now. Earlier today, there was a vote to cut off debate on the issue, and they got the support of two Republicans, Lindsey Graham and Rand Paul. And those are about as far as you can get on Republican philosophy, Graham and Paul. But they have also voted in the final vote now to confirm Jack Lew. So it certainly looks like he will be the new ambassador to Israel. Paul is an isolationist, doesn't really care much about foreign policy to begin with. But Lindsey Graham has made the rounds. He's been essentially a shadow Secretary of State, trying to keep Israeli-Saudi normalization in play after the Hamas massacre. He's been to Israel, Saudi Arabia, Egypt as of late. He said after the cloture vote today to cut off debate, he said, listen, I was just in Israel. They being the Israeli government, apparently, though we didn't name names, said they're okay with Lew. He said he has some concerns about what he did as a Treasury Secretary, especially in advocating for the Iran deal and his work there with possibly weakening sanctions and lack of enforcement. But he says he's a guy that he can work with, and so he voted to make him the new ambassador to Israel. That vote is going to wrap up in the next few minutes, and it certainly looks like Lew will be heading to Jerusalem probably much sooner than anticipated.
Much sooner, and of course he's going to have a hell of a lot on his plate when he gets here. What time to be coming to Israel as the U.S. ambassador. Mike Wagenheim, thank you for that. Now, over the past few weeks, we brought you stories of tragedy and survival from the communities on the Gaza border attacked by terrorists. But few are as improbable as those of Irit Lahad, a resident of kibbutz near Oz, who on the morning of October 7th initially took shelter in her home's safe room with her daughter, thinking this was just another round of rocket attacks. But she soon realized the terrorists were breaking into her home, and she had to find a way to seal the door of her safe room, which had no lock. She found the solution using some common household items. Well, joining us now is Irit Lahad, survivor of the kibbutz near Oz massacre. She's joining us from relocated to kibbutz Krami. Irit, tell us about that morning of October 7th.
We woke up at 6:35 a.m. from the red alarm, the color red, which is the missiles alarms, and I quickly jumped out of bed in my pajamas, ran to the safe room, and called my daughter, Lotus, come. And she came quickly in, we closed the door, and we need to wait 25 seconds, and we heard the missiles, the bombs, and right away we heard another color red, so my daughter says, let me go out, get the dog in. She ran outside, got the dog in, grabbed my phone, luckily. So we went inside, and
neighborhood saying, somebody's shooting my house. I was like, no way, no, cannot be. A second later, my other neighbor sent a text message to all of us saying that he sees armed Palestinians. Lock your doors. And I thought, lock the door? How do I lock the door? These doors don't lock. These doors are for missiles, not for against humans trying to break open the doors. So I started to really panic because right away we started hearing automatic weapons from all corners of the kibbutz. We are a small kibbutz. Kibbutz only has 420 people. That's all. Automatic weapons, grenades, everywhere at the same time. Endless shooting, and we started to shake from fear, knowing that any minute they can come in. We turned off the lights, silent. I didn't even want to talk to my or whisper to my daughter from this fear. So we just text to each other. I wrote something on my cell phone, gave her the cell phone, and I'm thinking all the time, the door doesn't lock. If they come into our house, we're dead. That's it. So I sent a text message to our to the kibbutz. We have our own messaging system. How does one lock the door? Nobody knew. Nobody even thought that the doors don't lock. So I studied again and again. No response, or people didn't know. So I text the same question to my family, and then I received this picture from my brother who lives 5 kilometers away in Moshav in Absor. This is how we did it. And I saw, okay, that's an idea. I can do something similar. Now we sit in the dark, keep silent. We hardly breathe from the fear. If they hear us, we are dead. So try to think quickly. Just dot. What do I have that looks similar to broomsticks? This is just my office. I have books, I have a desk, I have a computer. What do I have else that could resemble this? And I remember that I have in oar a rowing stick for boat from my childhood that I kept as a memory. I took it down, and then I needed another piece of stick. So thinking, okay, my vacuum cleaner, the Dyson vacuum cleaner, I took it apart and I used the hose of the vacuum cleaner, and I make jewelry. So I told my daughter, whispering, open the drawer, take the leather string from down there, and then she opens the drawer. We don't even think about it. We just open and move things, but in this time that you have to be quiet, every thing that you touch makes a sound, and you think, oh, they will hear us, they will come right away. Anyway, she pulled out the string and I tied it strongly. I realized that I cannot do like my brother's system because the vacuum cleaner hose doesn't go all the way through, so I put it so that it will push the door handle so they won't be able to move it open. Tied it really strongly. The heart is beating, your whole body is shaking. Just you hear all those automatic weapon and grenades all the time, and they can come in every minute. I finally finished, thought it was strong enough, piled a lot of books between the door and where we were hiding under the table, and we crawled under the table, and then I realized that from the shaking and the fear, I bumped into the table, and we sit under the table, and it's uncomfortable, we just moving, and it's so scary.
Right,
So,
you were in there for how long in the safe room?
11 and a half hours under the table. 11 and a half hours. And of course, they came in soon enough. They approached, they shot the house with an automatic weapon from all the sides. They were shouting loud voices in Arabic. And we entered at 6:35. At 10:30, they arrived to our house. As I said, they shot from all sides. They broke the whole house. We heard a lot of banging and all the shouting, loud voices in Arabic. And they approached the door and they tried to open and they bang and they get angry and they bang it and they try. And we were sure that we will die. I was sure that they will open, and my daughter and I were just laying down on the floor, holding hands, started to say beautiful words to each other. My daughter was saying how much she loves me, and she preached tears of
everything I did for her. And I said to her many, many loving words, and we just laid down on the floor, holding hands, saying goodbye basically to each other. Luckily, they couldn't open after 8 longer minutes, and they moved on, breaking more of our house, moved out, moved to the next door, next neighbor, same thing, shooting. We had a lot of breaking things, moved to the other neighbors. Then, when they moved to the neighbors that lived in front of me, they were using all this automatic weapon. And I heard their daughters, they have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old daughters. They were screaming and crying. And I was sure they took them out and killed them from screaming and crying.
What was the point at which you finally could come out of the safe room?
6 o'clock in the evening. 6 o'clock in the evening. And 11 and a half hours of despair, really, fear.
I just want to ask you, kibbutz, after that experience, are you ready to go back to the kibbutz and your others suffer terrible losses and live again in that community, Soria to Gaza?
Well, it's a good question. I can't even think about the next hour. Really, your whole world is shattered suddenly. It's something that one doesn't think that they will face in their whole life. So I'm at the stage now that I don't even believe that such a thing could have happened. Will I go back? I don't know. It's so scary. Why would I want to put myself in such a scary situation again?
Well,
it's terrible. I really don't wish for anybody to be in such a terrible fear.
I'm sure. All I can say is I do hope, with the sacrifices being made, that there will be a safer future for the residents of those communities there on the border with Gaza. And let's thanks to God, saved by a vacuum hose and a rowing oar. Miracle. It's nice to hear some miracles and survival amidst all this terror and morning that we're all going through, and I'm sure also your experience.
And we wait for all the hostages to come back and,
Absolutely.
with us,
Absolutely.
together,
Ivri Lahav, thank you for joining us on my 24 News to tell your story.
Thank you so much for putting those stories out.
Okay, thank you for joining us, Dr. Manuel Lavone. Thank you for joining us. Stay with us. We'll be back in just a few minutes with more on our continuing coverage on our 24 News.
Made for Me, a unique concept in Israel. Custom-made men's fashion to your measurements. Made for Me, designer of all your events. Schedule your appointment at www.madeforme.co.il. Made for Me, official dresser of I-24 News.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Israel is officially in a state of war. This is a very active scene, and we need to get in the car as we're talking.
100 soldiers and civilians have been kidnapped.
We just don't know anything.
Entire families, including babies and children and elderly, were butchered in their beds.
Awaken the giant, and we are ready and we are strong.
Everyone is showing up. This is the unity.
special broadcast on I-24 News. Now, before October 7th, there were some in Israel who doubted the fitness of female soldiers to perform in combat conditions. But in the wake of the Hamas attack on the south, some of the bravest accounts of heroism and sacrifice to emerge from that day were women serving as soldiers, as police officers, and as security personnel in those communities. Some of those stories are told in this report, adapted from Israel's Channel 12 News.
On that Saturday morning, as they rampaged through southern Israel, dozens of terrorists also attacked the city of Sderot and tried to take over the police station. One of the police officers at the station was Major Mor Shakuri.
She called me and said, "Mom, it's important for me that you know that if I don't survive, I love you, I love Dad, and take care of my sister."
When they realized that there were terrorists outside the station, several police officers went up to the roof and fought them from there. They remained there for 8 hours, fighting a non-stop battle, while Sderot's standby squads fought the terrorists from the outside.
Her commander came to me at 7 o'clock and told me she led us, said how many were injured. She spoke with the paramedic, with everyone, and believe me, I didn't even feel that she was in distress. I know more. She does not give up. If she was a coward, she would be alive with me.
Moore was supposed to get married in June to her partner David. He's also a police officer.
She was killed during a battle she was leading, and she shot terrorists and rescued the wounded, and in the end protected the residents of the south. It's not something that comforts us and brings her back, but it is something, giving us the strength that in the end she fought until her last minute and was a hero.
They found her with drawn pistols, 4 cartridges on her. Do you understand? And with all the pain, I'm proud of her, that she contributed and safeguarded us.
For 4 years, we were on the same path. She was simply a fighter.
The late Captain Eden Nimri, a squad commander in the Artillery Corps, was supposed to complete her service as a swimmer, but decided that she wanted to serve as a fighter. On Saturday morning, she was with her team at the base in Nahal-Oz when terrorists broke into it.
We got up on Saturday with the intention of having a picnic at the base, at the outpost, which is not her outpost. She has been serving on the northern border for the past year. She had just replaced a team that was there on holiday, and we planned to come to her to have a picnic there.
When they realized that the base had been infiltrated, she and her team jumped out of bed and barefoot in pajamas, they went out to fight the terrorists.
Eden and her team ran to the protected area, where they already found something like 30 terrified female observers. She and 4 female warriors were the only ones with weapons. She took the side that was closer to the entrance and everything was quiet. And with the gestures, she pointed where to aim, drew the weapon, terrorists entered, and her female warriors and Eden eliminated them.
This is the last photo that Eden actually took. As you can see that at first she was really with them on this side. If you think it was a protected room, well, she was initially on the exposed side, and then she jumped to the other side to cover the other opening.
Eden stayed fighting and was killed by terrorist fire. Only 2.5 days later did her family receive the notification of her death.
She was always a fighter, always wanted to be equal among equals, whether in swimming, whether in theater, whether in school graduation ceremonies. She didn't feel unequal. She thought she deserved it. She was always ahead.
I am angry with her, yes. She shouldn't have been there.
On Saturday morning, 90 newly enlisted recruits were at the Zikim base. At the gate, Sergeant Eden Alon-Levy, a rescue fighter, was with one of the rookies. She immediately understood the danger.
About 10 terrorists arrived there, equipped with RPGs, grenades. They started shooting at them and the staff. The officers joined her in the battle. Her entire staff fell with her.
6, including Eden, along with another recruit, were killed in this battle and managed to prevent the occupation of the camp and save the recruits.
I think that Eden's story undoubtedly proves how much female fighters can do, and even more. I'm just proud of her and hope I can be as brave as her. Yes, she is simply a hero, everyone's hero.
Eden had finished a military training course 2 months ago and was supposed to go on to officer's course. In addition, she was supposed to go to pilot training in a week after she decided that there were other targets she hadn't conquered. What do you miss the most?
That she came here to harass me. Even when I didn't have the strength. Sorry, it's just... You come here and just run out of energy, get straight into bed, and she'd just come, yell at me like, what's going on, and this. I miss her teasing. She should come and tease, big time.
In this war, more and more heroic stories of brave women are being reported. We know so far that 37 female soldiers were killed, 7 female police officers, a Shin Bet woman, and a paramedic on duty. Women who paid with their lives, while others continue to fight, even now.
And still with us, Eitan Danko. And I'm also ashamed to say that as more and more women did enter combat roles in the Israeli Defense Forces in recent years, there have been more and more voices questioning their ability, their heart, the appropriateness of having, and so many stories that come out of October 7th that show women heroically, in many cases, sacrificing themselves and to the point of rescuing many more people, either civilians or, as we heard even in this case, other soldiers, new troops.
Absolutely. There is no difference between men or women. I think we realize it's after years of that women joined to some of the corps that they were not allowed, and you see such hero stories. We have already some signs about the way they are acting as commanders, as officers, as fighters from small events near the borders, especially in the south.
Right.
But now, what we realize from the stories, you see the brave, the certainty that, first of all, they should give what they can to save people's lives, to fight for their soldiers, to fight for the country, and they put themselves on the side. And you see it with the policemen as well, the women that brought here the story. It's something that shows us, in a sad way, in a tragic way, how the women are involved today in many places as really equal fighters, commanders, and I think we all have to salute to those women, to those stories, not to forget them, and to put them in the place they should get this kind of honor. And I'm sure in the future, the IDF, besides the continuity, will open other opportunities for women. There are, especially in these days, when there are stories about what will be the size of IDF, time of joining. I think that after 7th of October, it's clear to us that we need a large army with a lot of fighters. We have to change the concept how to defend the borders, and the female will have a very important task in such a case.
Right, I think there will be a renewed discussion about military service, also involving other sectors, the ultra-Orthodox religious sector.
And by the way, in this sector, you have a lot of change at the atmosphere,
Sure.
and you see such support that I think the country has been come to another situation, and I think there should be a very deep leadership that will use the change of the Israeli society, the unity, female, religious. We are in a junction that we have to build a new society, because the main important thing for Israel's future is the people, and they vote by their legs and the way they are now behaving and giving themselves for the country.
All right, well, I want to now go back to the fighting inside the Gaza Strip, and I think we have a pretty good map that shows some of the locations. You can see that there. Let's talk about that, because we see there are 2 main focal points. In that area circled in green is where we see much of the which we see much of the fighting there. Let's talk about the strategy of choosing those particular locations. By the way, that red line, which is right below the lower green circle, that is the sort of halfway point of the Gaza Strip, where the IDF has told residents to move south.
It calls the Gaza River.
The Gaza River. It's, of course, it's not a river. It's a
river.
It's a riverbed, or it's not even a
wadi.
river. It's a wadi. It's barely a wadi.
For years, it separates between the north part of Gaza to the central part of Gaza.
Right.
And without getting inside let's say, the concept of the plan that was planned by IDF and running on the ground, you see one very clear thing. IDF identified that the part of the Gaza City is the main part that by destroying Hamas major structure, by killing the murderers, the terrorists themselves, their infrastructure, the way when they are, it's in the middle of Gaza.
Right, so I just clarify that's Gaza City, is the area that between the two green circles.
It's in the middle, but the green sites that you put are the last point on the west side of Gaza Strip, on the north side, near the Mediterranean. And if you identify their IDF forces, it means they succeed to surround Gaza. And from there, they can control what's going, especially on the northwest part, the green line on the top there, because this was the part where a lot of terror activities by submariners and kind of terrorists are doing it from the sea towards the Israel area. So this is one of the things that IDF succeed to stop now the corner that was very sensitive and used for commando activities by Hamas with a lot of efforts to create terror activities in the depths of Israel from the sea or from the ground area on the west side of this part. IDF is on a way of surrounding Gaza, Gaza City, and push it on a way to make the circle as smaller it can be.
All right, stay with us. I want to go now to a guest. Michael Rappaport is an actor you would probably recognize from numerous movies and TV shows over the years. But in recent years, he's extended his fame as a popular commentator on social media and podcasting. New York Jew, born and raised, Rappaport has been particularly outspoken on the Israel-Hamas war and the anti-Semitism it has stirred up. Now, he hasn't backed down in the face of some heavy blowback. In fact, he's pledged to donate $1 to the Israel Defense Forces for every critical post on his platforms that include a Palestinian flag. Here's a bit of Rappaport from his Instagram page.
The loss of any innocent civilians on any side, in any part of the world is always a tragedy. Peace, peace, peace. Everybody wants peace. Have you read the Hamas Charter? You should read it. Have you read the Hamas Charter? You should. Take a gander. It's a maniacally written manifesto about killing all Jews, the end of Israel. Also, they don't like Christians. Read, Google the Hamas Charter now.
And joining us from New York is actor